All right, so we are on the section that discrimination or discernment leads to dispassion, and we're on the very last question. And we've gone through quite a few sessions there where he was just talking about Sri Nisargadatta living in a different world, and he wanted a bridge to it. And Nisargadatta was telling him, well, you can't really put a bridge from the real to the imaginary. You just have to see the world and see it the way that it is. And he asked how to do it, and he said, well, or what the difference was. How come Sri Nisargadatta was able to do it and he wasn't? And he said, well, when my teacher told me that I was not the body, that I am that, I believed him. You believed you still had something to do. And so you have to go through and do what you believe you have to do to get forward in that. And so the questioner is starting off this morning saying, to be a Superman, one must be a man first. Manhood is the fruit of innumerable experiences. Desire drives to experience. Hence, at its own time and level, desire is right. All right. So he's saying, we've got we've got cause and effect we have to work through, and we've got a body mind that we're tied to. We have to learn to be what we are first, and then from there we can uh, reach, come to our, or grow into our realization. So of course by now all of us can look at that and sort of understand what the problem is. But here Maharaj says, well, all of this in a way is true, right? It is true that not all of us are even remotely able to just simply realize God, even though that's the reality. The reality is that we could right now, every single one of us could realize God. Uh, but we don't have that level of awareness, right? We live only in the top 2 inches, metaphorically, of our consciousness. We're not aware of all of our samskaras and all of our attachments and all of our assumed realities that are deep down inside of us. And that's what prevents that from being true for us. It's not that we have to go through all of these things, is that way down deep inside a part of us that we're not in control of because we're not aware of it. We believe that we have to do all of this stuff. And we believe that we're going to achieve something, or we're going to attain something. And I have to say, in the quiet of the desert, it's a lot easier to see that that's not true. I did a vlog yesterday, and I don't know if you saw it or not, but that just a beautiful, beautiful. It wasn't an enlightened experience at all like that, but it was a just such a clarity because it was so quiet and everything was so harmonious everywhere around me. The expanse of the land and the majesty of the mountains and the bigness of the sky and the sun coming up, just the calmness from being out there for a couple of days. It was so easy to go inside. It was so easy to feel the mantra just echoing in an inner reality. And I could see the two, it seemed to me that I could experience the unmanifest, which of course is ridiculous, but experience it in the sense of a real peace, an absolute inner silence. And that when I was experiencing that wonderful, 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 blissful inner space, and watching, seeing, and hearing everything in in the moving, changing world that I was observing, uh, it was such a wonderful harmony between the two because I could see how they were one and that they met in me. Uh, all of this in mind, of course. But when I try to follow the line of my eyes, like, if you look at something in the distance and you just sort of slowly move your eyes and follow the line all the way to yourself, I was doing that from my inner self, from the part of me that was enjoying this amazing inner peace, and I was drawing a line of sight, trying to just see where the boundary was between my inner world and my outer world. And for the first time, I really saw there was no boundary there. That this inner reality. is contiguous with the external reality, that it is, in fact, like fire and its power to burn. They cannot be separated like that. So he's saying, in a way, all of this is true. We do have to go through a process because we have our stories and our egos and our habits and our accumulated wrong thinking, our accumulated assumptions. And because we're not often practicing awareness, we often go into a state of just automatic living. We're not able to renounce it or let go of it because we're not aware. We don't even see it. So that in that way, it's true that we have to go through this process. That's why we're in class. That's why we do our practice. That's why we go to the temple and all of these things. He says, but a day comes when you have amassed enough and you must begin to build. You know, that a time comes when you've done so much and you've experienced so much and you begin to get tired. Really, you're just kind of reaching the end of your interest in playing. And so and then he says, well, then sorting out and discarding viveka and vairagya are absolutely necessary. This is the time to sit in contemplation and to look at the summary of life. This is why in the Indian tradition that was at the end of life was the time for sannyas, the time for going off as an old person, that you would wander off into the desert to sit and consider, what have you learned, what have you understood, what can you learn from this accumulated mass of life, of experience, the summary of all your stories. He says everything must be scrutinized and the unnecessary ruthlessly destroyed. Right? So you go through and you look at your life very carefully, and you have to leave no stone unturned. Look at all experience. Look at the reality objectively, and then those things that are not necessary, those things that are changing, those things which come and those things which go, at that point you have to let go. You have to just ruthlessly destroy them. Don't hold on to any of them. Don't think, oh, but I enjoy this so much or I enjoy that so much. Uh, you know, don't hang on to anything. Let go of everything as being an attraction or an aversion. Simply be. But this is what life experience is. This is how we live, and this is how we learn and how we grow, is to become aware of these teachings in our practical state, in our living state, and to practice them, experiment with them, check them out, see if you can see their truth or not. So that's what he's saying. Take all these things that you know, all of your experience, sort through them, look closely at them. Are they in alignment? Can you see the scriptures in the way that you're living? Can you see the opportunities that you have for adjusting your way of living in order to align with the scriptures so that you can see the truth? You can become aware of their isness. And then those things that are not necessary, ruthlessly discard, which means don't be gentle with them. Get rid of them, ideally. So he says, believe me, there cannot be too much destruction. So there's a lot of stuff that we've held on to. Just wait to, I remember when I had to clean up the estate of one of the devotees that passed away. That was ruthless. And there was no shortage of things that went into, we filled a whole dumpster, And so think about it. That person, it doesn't matter who they were, but that person was living a life with all of this stuff that went straight into the dumpster the day after she died. Why didn't that happen before she died? Why did she cling onto all of that stuff that was only worthy of a dumpster until the day that she died? And so this is what he's talking about. Consider carefully from the spiritual perspective, from the perspective of truth, and ruthlessly renounce. Get rid of all those things that aren't necessary. Free yourself from them. Stop dusting them and putting them back on the shelf. Believe me, there cannot be too much destruction, for in reality, nothing is of value. Ouch. Very strong statement. And in the eyes of Ramakrishna, not entirely true, because he's going from the pure Jnanic perspective here, where the world is only imaginary, that there's nothing real there. But Thakur says, no, there is something there. There is meaning in everything, because you look through it to see the divinity, to see the value of it. And so there is something in beauty, there is something in love, there is something in service, there is something in worship, in that sense. But it's knowing what it is, the things that you're actually doing and seeing and touching and feeling. Those things don't have any value except what you assign to them. So understand that and try to come to a place where your detachment and your attachment are of the same strength, the same value, so that you can let go when it's best to let go. You know, I'm going through it with my parents. My parents finally are realizing that they're actually going to get old. And, they bought that big house way out in the middle of nowhere up on the hill, 3 acres and to mow and maintain. And now my mother's complaining ruthlessly, oh, who's going to take care of my yard? Who's going to take care of my flowers? And, I haven't said I told you so yet, but when they moved into that house, 15 years ago, I told them, I said, what are you doing? This is your retirement house. You shouldn't get a 2-story house. You shouldn't have a 3-acre lawn. You shouldn't be so far from the grocery store and so far from the hospital. And I got so scolded back then. My mother yelled at me, what, do you have me buried already? It wasn't like that, right? It's just looking and seeing and understanding. It's accepting non-resistance, right? Where the body's going to go, the body's going to get old. So make adjustments, realize that, accept that. Don't bemoan it. Don't be sad about it. You knew it was coming from the day you were in kindergarten. This is that time. So be ruthless, be strong, be bold, because you have found the one most important thing, that love of the divine, that knowledge of self as spirit and not as body. So he says, be passionately dispassionate. That is all. Be passionately dispassionate. Find your joy in renunciation. Find your joy in letting go at this point. Why? Because you're getting ready to go on a cruise. You're getting ready to go on the most beautiful adventure that life can offer, the dropping of the body, coming nearer to realization, to the understanding of who you are. Oh, it's so close in old age. Old age is pure grace. To see it as suffering and, aside from having a good laugh about it, but seeing it as suffering and seeing it as the end and seeing it as sadness and a collection of all the things you can't do, nonsense. Absolutely wrong thinking, absolutely ridiculous thinking. Be passionately dispassionate. Let go of it all and understand that you're finally coming to that one most important thing. You're going to finally be in a position where when that body drops, you can realize God in that moment, because you will understand. You'll see the body drop. You'll watch the body drop, and you'll know that you were not the body in experience for the first time. And if you have been passionately dispassionate and you've been keeping your eyes on that truth, what will you do? Immediately you'll call out to Mother, you'll call out to Thakur, you'll call out to Jesus or Buddha or Rama or all of them. And you'll find your way to liberation by not feeling the need to grab on to anything else, by not feeling the need to find a hiding place or a distraction as you walk into that divine light. Right? So this is what he's saying. Be passionately dispassionate. That is all. And he goes on now to the section 24, where he calls God as the all-doer, the Jnani a non-doer. Right? So just that statement, Sri Ramakrishna says that ultimately you're not doing any of this. It's like in the dream, right? And in the dream, you could be so busy building a grand castle in the clouds if you wanted. But what are you doing? Well, nothing's being done. And who is the doer? There is no doer. It's not the imaginary person in the dream, right? That person doesn't really exist. It exists only in the mind of the sleeper. And so understand, your existence is not in this body. Your existence is not in this world. This is dreamlike. Nothing is being done, and you're not the doer because you are an assumed existence. You're a character in that dream. You actually are that which holds the whole dream. You are the one resting in in wonderful peacefulness, sound asleep, right in the bed. That is the one that you are. So this is God, the all-doer, and the Jnani, the non-doer, just the observer. So the questioner's got quite a question here. Oh my gosh, he's really. Let's see what he's got to say. This is almost a page long. Questioner: some Mahatmas, or enlightened beings, maintain that the world is neither an accident nor a play of God, but the result and expression of a mighty plan of work aiming at awakening and developing consciousness throughout the universe, from lifelessness to life, from unconsciousness to consciousness, from dullness to bright intelligence, from misapprehension to clarity. That is the direction in which the world moves ceaselessly and relentlessly. See, story after story after story here, placing reality outside of the self at every step. Of course, there are moments of rest and apparent darkness when the universe seems to be dormant, but the rest comes to an end and the work on consciousness is resumed. From our point of view, and that's exactly the problem. From our
Okay.
point of view, the did someone say something? Okay, from our point of view, the world is a tale of tears, a place to escape from as soon as possible and by every possible means. To enlightened beings, the world is good and it serves a good purpose. They do not deny the world is a mental structure and that ultimately all is one. But they see and say that the structure has meaning and serves a supremely desirable purpose. What we call the will of God is not a capricious whim of a playful deity, but the expression of an absolute necessity to grow in love and wisdom and power, to actualize the infinite potentials of life in consciousness. At this point, I want to go out and get a cup of coffee. Just as the gardener grows flowers from a tiny seed to glorious perfection, so does God in his own garden grow among other beings, men to supermen, who know and love and work along with him. And this is a very common perspective of the world, and it's very satisfying to think about and to dwell in. And it's all right for a stepping stone. But do you see all of the burden that's lying behind this story, lying behind this perspective? Even though it seems so beautiful, I mean, just responsibility, a burden, just more and more and more doership becoming necessary. When God takes rest, pralaya, those whose growth was not completed become unconscious for a time, while the perfect ones who have gone beyond all forms and content and contents of consciousness remain aware of the universal silence. When the time comes for the emergence of a new universe, the sleepers wake up and their work starts. The more advanced wake up first and prepare the ground for the less advanced, who thus find forms and patterns of behavior suitable for their further growth. Thus runs the story. The difference with your teaching is this: you insist that the world is no good and should be shunned. They say that distaste for the world is a passing stage, necessary yet temporary, and is soon replaced by an all-pervading love and a steady will to work with God. Right? So that's kind of the new age, not new age in the category, but kind of this new world religion. This is the perspective that uh, with this liberation theology and this social warriors and all of this kind of idea. This is us. We are co-creators with God, and that it's our responsibility to change the garden into a perfect garden and to live the life that brings everyone into this wonderful enlightenment. And so it's a very active and very real perspective of religion and the world, and it's valid from a perspective. I mean, it's valid because God is thinking it in a sense through all of these different people. But Shree Nisargadatta says, all you say is right for the outgoing pravritti path, right? So for the path that lives, that's outgoing, you're living in the world of the senses. You have fully committed yourself to the path of Eve in the garden. You're living through your senses, you're seeing beautiful things, you're taking those beautiful things, you're eating them, and you're hoping that ultimately you're going to reach a better world and a better place and a better humanity and a better all these things. And then Ramakrishna comes along and says it's the dog's curly tail, right? It's that this the world is the way it is. It's always going to be that way. It's going to change its manifestation. It's doing that constantly, but there's always going to be equal parts of up and down. Always equal parts. So he says, yes, you're right. For the outgoing mind, absolutely. That's a beautiful vision for the person who believes himself to be body mind and wants to stay in that state. For the path of return, nivritti, knotting oneself is necessary, right? So yes, as long as you want to play in the world, and we are all welcome to do that, there's nothing negative about it. You just have to be prepared to have as much suffering as you're having enjoyment. It's going to be up and down and round and round. So, but no problem. Play if you want to play, explore if you want to explore, and enjoy. And the more that you can know the reality, the more you'll be able to enjoy it, right? The more you'll be able to be content in it. So he says, for the return path, for this return to ourself, knotting oneself is necessary, denying the ego, uh, not through effort of will, but through observation. Careful inward observation and awareness will start to put holes in the ego of its own accord. So he says, my stand I take where nothing, paramakash, is. Words do not reach there, nor thoughts, right? The self is beyond all change. The actual self is the unchanging, unmanifest absolute. And no thoughts reach there. There are no waves crashing on the shore there. It can't be reached. To the mind, it is all darkness and silence. Then consciousness begins to stir and wakes up the mind, which projects the world, built of memory and imagination. Once the world comes into being, all you say may be so. It is in the nature of the mind to imagine goals, to strive toward them, to seek out means and ways, to display vision, energy, and courage. These are divine attributes, and I do not deny them. But I take my stand where no difference exists, where things are not, nor minds that create them. There I am at home. Whatever happens does not affect me. Things act on things. That is all. Free from memory and expectation, I am fresh, innocent, and wholehearted. Mind is the great worker, and it needs rest. Needing nothing, I am unafraid. Whom to be afraid of? There is no separation. We are not separate selves. There is only one self, the supreme reality, in which the personal and the impersonal are one, right? And here, this personal and impersonal, what he's talking there is those things that are personal to you, you've placed inside of yourself. Those are the things you think are you and are inside of you. The impersonal things, the things that you are not fully aware of, the things that you don't know intimately, you've placed outside of yourself, right? And so the ultimate reality is that there is no inside outside, right? Just like in the dream. The dream, you can have a body and you can have a world outside of it. But the truth of it is that all of that is inside the real you, which is neither the world outside nor the imagined ego perspective in the dream, but a container around the whole, which is the dreamer, one who's asleep in the bed. Metaphorically, it's not to say that God is asleep somewhere, but that God is resting in that perfection, in a perfect balance. When you build a tower of blocks, put great effort into it, when it falls down, it doesn't fall forever, right? It falls to a place of equilibrium, a place of perfect balance. It falls until all of the blocks are in their most stable position, and then it stops. And that is where we're going to end up. Right now, we're falling through the dream. We're all crashing down. Everything's making noise. Everything's changing constantly. Nobody knows where it's going to end and how exciting this is. But in the end, we reach the ultimate truth. when it comes to its place of stillness, it comes to its place of absolute equilibrium, absolute perfection in balance. There we find the truth of these things, which is that there was only one. There's not a whole bunch. There's one universal isness that is ever free, ever pure, ever blissful, absolute love, absolute wisdom, absolute being, outside of time, unchanging, no cause and effect. There is our true nature. That is the deepest self that we can possibly enjoy. Uh, it's all illegal language, but that highest self that we can possibly enjoy in our deepest meditation, because that is the ultimate isness, that we finally have found that which needs to know nothing else. We have finally that which by knowing all things are known. We have finally found that condition that is beyond condition, indestructible, unchanging. And we have found a contentment and a wholeness and a love that also is free of circumstance, free of condition. That is our divine self. So the questioner says, all I want to be able to do is to help the world, right? This is natural. When you identify with body and mind, it's your nature to love. It's your nature to be wise. And through your existence, you want to manifest that. That's Shakti. That's word. And so we go and we do that. Maharaj says, who says you cannot help? You made up your mind about what help means and needs and got yourself into a conflict between what you should and what you can, between necessity and ability, right? So there's an attachment. When it's the ego self that wants to improve something, the ego self has to do it, right? When that self that has denied the sense of egoism, it's not doing things for results, then it works through the presence of the divine presence within, that through that inspiration, right? The inspiration of what? Satchitananda, that love and existence and wisdom within you, intelligence within you. Then that acts. You don't act. You are inspired. The movement happens through inspiration. The body becomes the puppet of the perfect. And there's no goals. There's no end game in that. So all I want to be able to do is help the world. Well, who says you cannot help? You made up your mind about what help means, right? So there's the thing. If you're from ego perspective, you're not going to really know how to help. You're going to think that being wealthy is better than being in poverty. Well, okay, so you're going to work for that. That can't happen ultimately. You're going to think that being well-fed is better than being hungry. You're going to make all of these decisions based on what's good for a body and what's good for a mind. But from the self, the real nature of things, neither of those things matter in essence. Now, that doesn't give us the right, of course, to run out to hungry people and say, you don't need to eat, shut up. That's a big house isn't going to be any better than your tent. That's not the point. The point is for ourself, right? The point is for finding our own contentment and our own truth in that. And Vivekananda says that a man sitting alone on a mountaintop, realizing the divine, does more good to the world than 1,000 people working in hospitals to serve the poor. Right? That vibration reaches out farther. Look at who we remember. How many people have built hospitals and served the poor over the last 2,000 years? Do we remember any of them? Not many of them, if any of them. But who do we remember? We remember Buddha. We remember Rama. We remember Jesus. These are the men that went off to a mountaintop, realized their nature, and gave all of us the answers that we needed to find an inner peace and to find the meaning of life and to find a fulfillment that's not composed of changing things. It's not going to go away. It's not going to disappear. So the questioner says, but why do we do so? Why do we help? Why do we do this? Well, that's true. He says, your mind projects a structure and you identify yourself with it, right? What is that structure? It's this imagined body. It's your imagined circumstance. It's your imagined values. It's your imagined history, right? The good and bad things that you imagine have created what you are. So you've created a structure and you've identified yourself with it. It is in the nature of desire to prompt the mind to create a world for its fulfillment, right? Isn't that not what we are trying to use our world for? It's for our own fulfillment. We're trying to find just the right house and just the right partner and just the right car and just the right children and just the right job and just the right amount of success and just the right amount of health. We're trying to adjust something in a world that is in constant change, constant, unrepeating flow of change. So, is it not clear that if we take that approach, we're attempting to do the impossible? Even that beautiful, perfect home is going to need a new roof. It's going to need a paint job. It's going to need new carpet. It's going to need whatever. And everything that you imagine for your contentment and perfection in this world is going to turn into a bondage. You're going to have to serve it continuously because of that nature of things. So our mind projects this structure, we identify ourselves with it, and then it's the nature of our desire. Once we've done that, once we've identified that structure made out of finite things, finite changing things, uh, instantly desire is a part of it. And the nature of that desire is to prompt the mind to create a world to fix everything, to make it fulfilling, make it last, make it important, make it deep, make it something to take care of this hunger I have. Even a small desire can start a long line of action. Swami Prabhupada was so aware of that. When he ran that temple, it's like for him to do something new literally took the movement of God. Because he understood that even the smallest desire has a long line of action that it requires. What about a strong desire? Right? What about a strong desire, that strong desire for name and fame, or that strong desire for wealth? What a long life of action is necessary to achieve that. And once it's achieved, to maintain it, right? So that you don't lose it all in the market overnight. Desire can produce a universe, and indeed it has. Its powers are miraculous. Just as a small matchstick can set a huge forest on fire, so does a desire light the fires of manifestation. That's a wonderful meditation. That's a wonderful meditation. Sit in the middle of your home one day and pick out one object at a time and think about what match of desire created that thing, right? Look at all the things that need to be maintained in your house, in the world that you're in, that you've created, and try and follow them all back to the original match. Think of the days when you were a child free at home, and now here you are in the midst of this empire that's requiring this constant work and worry on your part, and try and identify what was it that I had in mind. What desire struck that match and created this forest fire?
That's a great Swami seed, but I live in a house where I don't even know where anything came from. So
Yes, well, how did you get to that
special
house?
situation.
Yes, but even that has a source, right? All movement is the result of desire, right? All action is a result of desire, result of karma, and creates more karma continuously. And so you can see that all of us are on stationary bicycles. And to the extent that we're not discerning the situation and not paying attention, uh, we pedal faster and faster. And all of us believe as we pedal harder and harder, faster and faster, that we're going to get somewhere. But we're all on a stationary bicycle because that which is you does not change. That which is you does not move. That which is you does not act. He says the very purpose of creation is the fulfillment of desire. The desire may be noble, it may be ignoble. Space is neutral, right? So this world in which you act is neutral. It's your desires that have value, positive or negative. And therefore, all the things in the world are neutral in space because they're all created of space, oddly enough. But all of them have no value until they meet you. Now, no value doesn't mean unvaluable in that sense. It's like they serve a purpose, but ultimately that purpose is only because of an imagined cycle of cause and effect. But really, things don't have a value until they meet you, right? Until they meet you. Uh, it's yeah, nothing has a value until it meets you and you decide whether you want it or not. And to the degree you want it, it's valuable. To the degree you don't want it, it's not valuable. So he says, the desire may be noble or ignoble. Space is neutral. One can fulfill it with what one likes, or one can fill it with what one likes. And that's what we do, right? You fill your house with what you like. That's what you do. You fill your house, you try and fill your whole life with stuff that you like. The only problem is you can't have stuff you like without having stuff you don't like. So you're still in the middle of it. So one can fill it with what one likes. You must be very careful as to what you desire. There you go. And that's part of discernment. Think, okay, I desire this. What follows? Right? When I lived in San Francisco, the monastery, such an irony, because the monastery in San Francisco is in the richest neighborhood in San Francisco. It's one block down the hill from Billionaires Row. And I used to walk up there every day for the first several years that I was in the monastery. And I would see these beautiful houses. And the big thing about rich, beautiful houses, the people, they never like to put curtains in their house because they want you to see all of their rich, beautiful things in the windows. They only put curtains on the second floor. And so you could walk along and you could look into these big, beautiful houses. And at first it didn't bother me. I didn't think anything about it. But if you keep um, uh, exposing yourself to things, eventually they start to tickle a little bit. And I remember one day feeling the desire to live in one of those big, giant, beautiful houses kind of came up in my mind. And fortunately, I was aware. And fortunately, I was a monk. So I had the tools to do some discernment. And I stood there looking at it. And I said, okay, imagine that it's yours, right? Who's going to clean that vast mansion? Who's going to pay the property tax on that mansion, which is probably more than I can imagine, probably million bucks or more a year, for that house just in taxes. And then I thought, who's going to mow the yards on that thing? Who's going to fix that incredible roof on that thing? Who's going to do all of this stuff? And where is all the resources going to come from to do all of this stuff? I'm going to have to manage or own a huge company. Well, if I own a huge company, how many thousands of people are going to depend on my decisions for their own livelihoods, for their own houses, for their own cars? And I thought, oh my God, get rid of that house. Bulldoze that house immediately. I do not want thousands of people dependent on me for their incomes and their families. I don't want, to have to hire and manage a staff of people to keep that house clean and to keep the yards and those beautiful gardens all in working order. So it's very important to carefully consider what you desire, because all of it has a long line of action that follows. And so if you become discerning like that, you temper your desires, right? You start to realize, wow, maybe I don't really want that because it comes with a lot of things that I didn't think about, when I went running after it. So you must be very careful as to what you desire. And as to the people you want to help, they are in their respective worlds for the sake of their desires. There is no way of helping them except through their desires. You can only teach them to have right desires so that they may rise above them and be free from the urge to create and recreate worlds of desire, abodes of pain and pleasure. right? So only an enlightened soul can really actually help somebody. And so does that mean we don't go out and help anybody? No, not at all. If we're going out to help somebody, we're in karma yoga. And karma yoga says don't do it for a result, do it as worship, realizing that you are not helping them, you are helping yourself by serving them. Understand that there is nothing that you can do to help another person. You can only worship God within that person. And you do that by your offering of service, by your offering of love, right? Because if you think you're helping someone and that relationship goes on in that condition, that person's going to resent you at some point because they're always inferior to you. You are always helping them. And you're going to come to grow an expectation that they feel a certain way about your constant service of them. And when their resentment grows and they don't appreciate you, or they start to have some resentment toward you, then you're going to get very angry and very disillusioned and unhappy. And when what started out as a beautiful thing is now got both of you angry at each other, or not, maybe not angry, but not appreciating each other anymore. And so this is, how you help. You help by not doing it for a result and not to help a person, but you do it out of your own nature, knowing that you're worshiping God in that other person and that you are that. So anything you do to help others, you're doing to yourself. So you don't see it as separate and apart, and it doesn't build resentment and it doesn't build ego, right? The questioner says, a day must come when the show is wound up. A man must die. A universe must come to an end. Maharaj, just as a sleeping man forgets all and wakes up for another day, so he dies and emerges into another life. So do the worlds of desire and fear dissolve and disappear. But the universal witness, the supreme self, never sleeps and never dies. Eternally, the great heart beats, and at each beat, a new universe comes into being. Right? So this is all just the self, the eternal witness, the dreamer, watching and enjoying the dream, playing all of the parts, knowing nothing is changing, nothing is happening, just enjoying the manifestation of the self, the manifestation of a pure, unconditioned love, the manifestation of an infinite and deep wisdom, all through the miracle and wonder and mystery of being, of existence. So know yourself to be that, and you don't get caught in the dream. Live in the dream knowing that it's a dream, knowing that you are somewhere that cannot be touched, cannot be reached, cannot be affected by the contents of the dream. And then the dream ceases to be stressful, fearful, ceases to be anything that you don't feel like it being for whatever reason, becomes a manifestation of inspiration instead of a manifestation of all the other possibilities. Is he conscious? Right? Is this supreme witness, this eternal witness, is he conscious? Maharaj, he is beyond all the mind conceives. He is beyond being and not being. He is the yes and the no to everything, beyond and within, creating and destroying, unimaginably real. Right? So for him to be conscious, consciousness is awareness with objects in it, right? And that one without a second, that's pure awareness, meaning there's no objects in it. So there's no consciousness as such. It's beyond consciousness. Now, this is not something we shoot for. This is not something we even think about because there's no possibility of coming anywhere close to the truth of what it is, right? So this sentence here is way beyond us. So we can't sit there and imagine and think, gosh, that seems really boring. Or gosh, that must be a sociopath. It's like we can imagine all kinds of things, but there's no way that we can drop all of the strings of our own attachment and our own consciousness to imagine something that is not of the mind, something that is beyond the mind. So he is beyond all the mind conceives, yes. I don't know that I could say he's beyond mind, because pure mind and Brahman are the same. That mind with no sense of particular is God, is this divinity, is this eternal witness. That plus, you always have to put the plus at the end, though. There's always things we do not know that are still the divine. So he's beyond all that the mind conceives, beyond being and not being. He is the yes and no to everything, beyond and within, creating and destroying, unimaginably real. So all of that's beyond all of the dual throng. You can see there all of the things that if you have an object, you're in that dual throng. Everything plus and minus. So God and the Mahatma, God and the Supreme Being, are they one or two? They are one. They are one. All right. So let's go ahead and